The Mr. Enter team is raising $500 for the Trevor Project. If you'd like to donate, visit the link in the description.
Let's talk about Lloyd in space. I wanted and still want to do a full admirable animation on the show because it's like completely insane. The first episode has Lloyd turn 13, gamble with robots, like actually lose money, he gets in debt. He crashes a police car, and then he blows up a power plant. This is episode 1 of Lloyd in space. That's not even mentioning that Lloyd literally kills people in the show's intro.
Oops.
But because I'm focused on some big projects, I've had to put full show reviews on the back burner. But I thought it might be fun and make this channel seem a little bit more alive if I talked about interesting singular episodes on the side. And when it comes to Lloyd in Space, there is no episode more interesting than Season 3, Episode 9, Neither Boy Nor Girl. Just the title can probably give you a hint as to why. Some information right up front. This episode was written in 2002, and terms like non-binary and gender fluid wouldn't really enter the public lexicon for at least a decade. The perspective that this episode was written for is something along the lines of a more typical boys versus girls episode. You see these a lot in cartoons, at least you did back in the day. It's the concept of the show itself that has let this particular episode age, let's call it, strangely for right now. Lloyd in Space is a show about alien species living together in a space station, and the different species all have unique cultures and biologies, which allows it to have very different takes on the traditional lessons that you get in your typical Disney cartoon. One of the earlier episodes is about learning to accept someone for both their positive and their negative traits, but because it's a show about aliens, it's portrayed by Cindy, who has one head that is always nice and another one that is always mean, but they are both Cindy. The show is really genius in that kind of way, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking about it at length. But for now, let's talk about the one episode that everyone does remember. The plot is relatively simple. The episode starts with the boys, our typical main characters, listening to stereotypical boy music, I guess, which is like some grunge rock thing. I'm not good at music terminology. Meanwhile, the girls nearby don't like their music and think that stereotypical girl music is better. In this case, some kind of singer-songwriter ballad. I will give some credit here. This plot usually has the characters becoming randomly sexist out of nowhere. There is definitely a little bit of that kind of stuff here, but the spark is more of a different taste in music than actual genuine out-of-nowhere sexism. They decide to settle this disagreement by asking the new kid Zoid which type of music is better.
I guess I'd have to say that Aurora's music is sparse, allowing the themes of suffering and depression to resonate in her lyrics, while total cosmic annihilation is pure power. Their music assaults your ears with the force of a solar windstorm. So there you go. Hope that helps.
I have no idea if any of that actually makes sense, but I guess the point here is that Zoid answers the question without answering the question. This directly leads to confusion over whether or not Zoid is a boy or a girl. Yes, really.
What are you talking about? Zoid isn't a boy.
And she liked our music better.
Whoa, wait 1 second. Not a boy? What, you think he's a girl?
Well, isn't it obvious?
Okay, so I think a lot of people misinterpret the episode. So let me get the most basic thing out of the way here. The characters are idiots. They're 13, and they're all stupid. Like, they're portrayed as stupid in several episodes, especially within this episode. The only character in the entire episode for the entire time that is ever portrayed as in the right is Zoid themselves. Zoid calls them out a couple of times throughout the episode. The other kids don't get the picture because, once again, they're idiots. Like, Lloyd's friend is literally Patrick Star. Much of this episode is about the kids at first trying to figure out whether Zoid is a boy or a girl, and later tries to influence them through stereotypically gendered activities. They try to see which gender Zoid is by their notebook, for example. However, one side is quote-unquote masculine, and the other side is quote-unquote girly.
What the heck are you? A boy or a girl? Because the fact is, we just can't tell.
Oh, that. I thought you knew. I'm neither.
A third into the episode, the kids figure out that Zoid's species chooses what they will become on their 13th birthday, and then the kids go about trying to influence their decision. I think there's some subtlety here that people do miss. The girls first try to take Zoid to a sappy movie, but the Patrick Star friend, a boy, gets really into the movie. The girls take Zoid to a dance aerobics workout, and the brain, also a boy, ends up liking it. The girls take Zoid out on a shopping spree, and Eddie, also a boy, sees some clothes that he likes. It clearly shows that these stereotypical activities don't define gender. The characters just think that they do. I can agree that this episode probably should have been a little bit less subtle about it, but the sentiment is there at least. Now, that's not to say that some of this episode didn't age poorly, because I can imagine this being very hard for some people to watch nowadays.
Are you now, or have you ever been a boy or a girl?
Nope. That is the freakiest thing I have ever heard.
Oh boy, these kids, they wouldn't survive the modern world, let's say that. Like I said, this episode was written in 2002, and it has a very 2002 understanding of gender. Just note, once again, that the only person in the episode who is in the right is Zoid. The first act is about the boys and girls trying to figure out whether Zoid is a boy or a girl. Then they find out that Zoid's species chooses. Act 2 is about them trying to influence Zoid, as if it was a competition. However, when Zoid figures out, they tell everyone off.
You guys are betting whether I'll decide to be a girl or a boy. That's why you've been so nice to me. You each want me to support your side.
Zoid gets pretty pissed off.
Come on, Lloyd, I'm not stupid. Or maybe I am. Stupid enough that I would actually believe you were my friends.
Zoid, wait!
So, being Disney protagonists, the other kids try to make it up to Zoid. But like, morons. The boys get Zoid quote-unquote girly stuff, and the girls get Zoid quote-unquote masculine stuff, to show that they have accepted the choice that they didn't know that Zoid has or hasn't made. The episode portrays the kids as stupid. I hope that everyone realizes that. And once again, Zoid tells them off for the second time in the episode. This speech does age poorly though, at the very least it's a little bit clunky.
Look, I had a great time hanging out with you girls. Shopping, solar sizing, watching that beautifully sad movie. On the other hand, chucking rocks rocks! And so does playing pile-on and having belching contests. So don't you see? Boys and girls are both cool.
Zoid talks about all the things that they did with the girls as if that is being a girl, and does the same thing with the boys.
But it's my decision, not yours. And if you guys really are my friends, it shouldn't matter to you if I'm a girl or a boy. Because either way, I'll still be me.
It does save a few points for an ending like that though. The big problem with the episode though is that this is Zoid's only appearance. So we don't get that needed missing ingredient of Zoid keeping the same hobbies and interests that was established in this episode. I don't know entirely how fair it is to critique this episode for that though. The show generally had an alien of the week structure. The only aliens that showed up again and again appeared in the first season, and even ignoring that, there were only 8 episodes after this, and one of them was about racism. I'll let you figure out whether or not I'm joking. The episode's ending also gets a little bit of heat.
I've decided I'm not telling.
What? But why not?
Because it's none of your business.
Zoid has chosen whether they want to be a boy or a girl in private, and they have chosen not to tell anyone, which would probably help everyone else finally get the point. However, Zoid says this, which has led to a lot of contention.
So we'll never find out if you're a boy or a girl?
Oh, you'll find out someday when I get a crush on one of you. See ya!
Now, it's so obvious that it almost doesn't need mentioning, but sexuality is not the same thing as gender identity. Personally though, I think Zoid is just fucking with them. Think about it like this. Even in a sitcom for 2002, it's not guaranteed that Zoid would even eventually get a crush on someone else there. And it's clear that these characters definitely deserve at least a little bit of fucking with, because it's a here we go again ending. It's clear that the point is the characters haven't actually learned their lesson, once again because they're stupid. And that was neither boy nor girl. No matter what, this episode is always going to be fascinating, because as far as I can tell, it's the first episode of a Western cartoon to discuss non-binary gender identity, and that's largely because the episode did it by accident. It comes from a perspective where quote-unquote choosing your gender is a sci-fi alien thing. 20 years ago was certainly a different world. But for the first episode ever to do something like this, it's not great, but it definitely could have been worse. I'm not going to say that this episode aged well or anything like that. To be as fair as I can, it's a starting point, if nothing else. This wasn't the only episode about LGBT topics from the time, and even the ones that did this kind of thing intentionally are of a similar quality. For example, there were a few episodes about gay people and how we should be accepting of them, but almost always the gay people in said episodes were typically made up of nothing but extreme stereotypes. We look back on these episodes and we cringe. And we should, because doing so is just a reminder of how far we have come. Yes, I am still planning on talking about the Owl House.